Happy New Year! 2025 has been a pretty eventful year for Assassin's Creed, as I'm sure we're all aware. We had the messy pre-launch for Assassin's Creed Shadows and the delays and whatnot. And then we had the actual head of the franchise straight up leaving Ubisoft, which spiraled into a whole post-Civil War Assassin's Creed game getting cancelled. And, somehow in the middle of all of that, we still got a genuinely great free DLC with Valley of Memory for Mirage. So yeah, a lot happened, way more than it felt like at the time. But now we're here in 2026, and instead of looking back, I want to look forward. What does this year actually have in store for Assassin's Creed? What should we, realistically expect? That's what I want to get into today. I also haven't really been doing these update or news type videos lately, as you may have noticed, mostly because I don't really like doing that style of content. It feels cheap and lazy. But with everything lining up for 2026, it feels like the right time to talk about what's next and where Assassin's Creed could be heading into this new year. Okay, let's start with what I would assume is the closest upcoming thing related to Assassin's Creed, and that's the Black Flag remake, or rather it's now called Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced for those who aren't aware. I think it's a pretty solid name for a remake. Anyway, when can we expect this game to be revealed and released? Well, first of all, everything seemed like an announcement was pointing towards the Game Awards that just happened. But as we know, nothing about Assassin's Creed was shown there at all. But what we do know is that in their latest financial report, they showed their 2026 fiscal year lineup. And there is one game listed as an unannounced title, and that right there is the biggest tell. So according to Insider Gaming, that mystery game is the Black Flag remake, and it's set to release before the end of Ubisoft's fiscal year, which means before March 31st, 2026. More specifically, the target release window could be the week of March 23rd. So yeah, this thing's not really far off at all. Now, what that also tells me is that the reveal has to be quite soon. Now, will they shadow drop the game? Probably not. I've seen some people speculating if they do that, but to me that doesn't make sense at all. I mean, you're not going to shadow drop a remake of one of your most popular games ever. And if you say, well, what about the Oblivion remaster? Well, the difference is Ubisoft are in a really rough state, so shadow dropping is probably the worst thing they could do to generate hype. If the game is really launching around late March, then we're probably looking at an official reveal sometime early 2026. My guess would be January. So, a short marketing cycle, a little gameplay showcase, and then boom, it's out. Now, what I would do if I was in Ubisoft's position is host a Ubisoft Forward event in January. Now, if you don't know what a Ubisoft Forward event is, it's basically Ubisoft's own showcase. Think of it like their version of a PlayStation State of Play. This is usually where they like to make their big announcements, especially for Assassin's Creed. Revealing the Black Flag remake there to me just makes a lot of sense. Not only because Black Flag Resynced is clearly real, but because this is an opportunity for Ubisoft to show a lot of their other stuff sitting in the vault right now. There are major games that still haven't been shown properly, or haven't been shown at all. A Ubisoft Forward would be the perfect place to show the Prince of Persia remake, Far Cry 7, the Splinter Cell remake, and whatever the next Ghost Recon ends up being. I think it's the most obvious way for Ubisoft to lay out what 2026 actually looks like for them, but that's just what I would do personally. Who am I, right? Anyway, moving away from the speculation, we do have some other information about the Black Flag remake that I haven't really talked about in a video yet, but I'm sure many of you know by now. So recently, Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced actually showed up on the PEGI ratings website before getting removed almost immediately. And just to quickly explain that part, PEGI is basically the European Game Ratings Board. It's the organization that assigns age ratings to games across Europe. When a game shows up on PEGI's website, it often means it's far enough into development that publishers are preparing it for release soon. That's about as close to an official confirmation as you can get without Ubisoft, straight up announcing it. Of course, there has been other stuff like the situation with Edward Kenway's voice actor. There's been the pure art stuff. There's been all the insider gaming information and so on. Now, I did make a video 2 months ago going over what I would like to see in this Black Flag remake, so be sure to check that out if you haven't. Now, one last thing about the Black Flag remake before we move on. I don't think this game will be treated as the next mainline entry for Ubisoft personally, because everything about this game points it to being a bridge release, and not a future of the franchise type of game. And that's not a bad thing, by the way. The fact that Ubisoft Singapore is leading this project says a lot. It actually makes perfect sense when you think about it. Singapore has spent years working on Skull and Bones, which means they already have the modern naval tech. You know, ocean assets, stuff like that. So reusing and refining that tech for Black Flag Resynced is the most efficient move that Ubisoft could make, especially if they want this game out quickly. But from Ubisoft's perspective, the real next big Assassin's Creed is Hexe. That's the game that they're betting the future of the franchise on. And speaking of Hexe, let's talk a bit about what we can expect for that game in 2026. Well, as for a reveal, again, I think it would only make sense to reveal it at that hypothetical Ubisoft Forward event. Now for this one, I don't think they need to show much. Literally just show a tease. For example, when the event is about to end, they could maybe add one last surprise at the very end where it's a 30-second teaser trailer for Hexe. And this would just create speculation and hype. Again, they don't need to do much because they'll probably want the Black Flag remake to be the big highlight of the year. But as for when I think Hexe will be released, well, it's bad news. First off, timing matters way more than people like to admit. When everything goes smoothly, Ubisoft always launches Assassin's Creed games in October or November. I think it's mostly October though, except Assassin's Creed Shadows, which was an anomaly due to the delays. That's the window that they like. That's where the sales are the strongest, and that's, you know, a perfect holiday season type of window. The problem is next November is currently occupied with a certain game. You may have heard of this game. It's called GTA 6. And no matter how confident a publisher is, nobody actually wants to release their game anywhere near GTA 6. History shows studios will move heaven and earth to avoid it. If you release your big game near GTA 6, you are asking for it to be dead on arrival. Now, could Hexe release earlier in the year instead? Definitely not, because of the Black Flag Resynced March window. And also, if it did release earlier in 2026, it would mean having too much Assassin's Creed in one year. Especially with, on top of the Black Flag Resynced, there's the year 2 of Shadows, there's Invictus, which I'll talk about soon. So yeah, it does start to get a bit messy. Ubisoft doesn't really need Hexe in 2026 to keep Assassin's Creed in the spotlight. So I think pushing Hexe to early 2027 makes the most sense in my opinion. It could be February or March, I have no idea. I just know it's not smart to release Hexe in 2026. Now, moving away from the speculation, there is some actually confirmed information about Hexe that I think is worth talking about. For example, we recently found out that the game director for Assassin's Creed Hexe is a man that's named Benoit Richer, and that alone could tell you a lot about the direction this game could go in. Mr. Benoit was the game director on Batman Arkham Origins, which I know is already a game people are split on, but it absolutely nailed its tone and atmosphere. He was also a game director on Assassin's Creed Valhalla, so he does understand the franchise inside and out, especially from its modern RPG side to its older roots. Now that combination is quite interesting when you think about it, because Hexe is already a game that sounds like it's aiming for something darker and more, linear focused. And I think this guy has experience handling projects that lean into, mood and tension. Now on the narrative side, Hexe's lead side content writer is a woman that's named, excuse my pronunciation, Cheyenne Poilani Maureen, and this is where things get really exciting. She previously worked as a senior game writer on Star Wars Jedi Survivor. She was a narrative designer on Jedi Fallen Order, and also worked as an associate designer on the game called Judas. Now on top of that, she was a BAFTA breakthrough in 2024, and she made Forbes 30 under 13 games. Now that background gives me a lot of confidence in Hexe's side content storytelling. The Jedi games are known for strong writing with some meaningful optional stories, and that's something Assassin's Creed has struggled with a lot. So when you think about the people leading Hexe, both on the gameplay and narrative side, it really does feel like Ubisoft is bringing in a lot of talent here. But then again, the only thing that's holding Ubisoft talent back, as we know, is what is above them. Oh yeah, and recently there was also a man named James Nadiga who returned to Assassin's Creed as a narrative director. He previously worked on Assassin's Creed a long time ago with the modern day for Rogue, Syndicate, Assassin's Creed Initiates, stuff like that. Now yes, his work isn't the most exciting, but I think just the idea of bringing back those old OG developers is something positive. He is working on a secret project according to his LinkedIn profile. I have no idea what that is, but only time will tell. And the last thing about Hexe I want to discuss is some rumors I've seen. Now this comes from Jonathan, who is very reliable when it comes to Assassin's Creed. He's the person that leaked Mirage before it actually came out. Anyway, for Hexe, Jonathan hinted in one of his videos that Claudia Auditore, Ezio's sister, could potentially appear in Hexe. Now, at first I will admit that sounds a bit strange, especially since Hexe is rumored to be set during the 16th century, which is technically later when Claudia was most active in the franchise. But if this ends up being true, it wouldn't be that shocking. Assassin's Creed has always played loosely with timelines when it comes to, memories, artifacts, documents, or even indirect appearances. Claudia is one of those characters that never really got the spotlight she deserved, despite being important to the Brotherhood during Ezio's time. Now, another thing worth clearing up is the rumored name of the protagonist. We've known for a while that the protagonist of Hexe is named Elsa, but I can confirm that's no more. I was personally told by somebody who works at Ubisoft, who I can't name, that the name has changed. Of course, I can't share what the new name is, but what I can say is that Elsa was always just a placeholder. Now let's talk about something that's actually confirmed, and that's Assassin's Creed Shadows Year 2. And look, if you're already tired of hearing about Shadows, I don't blame you at all, so feel free to skip this part using the timestamps if you want. But yeah, year 1 of Shadows post-launch was quite rough, I'll admit. I'll be completely honest about it. It was easily one of the weakest post-launch cycles we've seen from any of the RPG Assassin's Creed games. And if anybody from Ubisoft Quebec's post-launch team watches this, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, I'm just being straight up. At this point, I genuinely think the best move is to stop the post-launch content for Shadows and let the team move on. The interest just isn't there anymore. I mean, the player numbers are extremely low, and almost every time something new releases in the post-launch, it always seems to spark more backlash than excitement. And that's not a great place for a live supported game to be, which, by the way, a single player game should never be treated as a live service game, I'm sorry. And I know saying that out loud is basically a death sentence in certain unfriendly spaces, as seen by this absolute disaster of a subreddit where a bunch of people have decided to label me as a grifter because of my criticism for the Attack on Titan collab. But yeah. However, year 2 is not being cancelled, but what is cancelled is the second DLC for Shadows. Now, this was confirmed by Joe Raptor when he did a live stream with Simon, the post-launch guy for Assassin's Creed Shadows. Now, this is quite crazy when you look at the Assassin's Creed history. For the past decade, every big Assassin's Creed game has at least 2 major expansions, sometimes even more. Origins had 2, Odyssey had 2, Valhalla had 3, I think. So for Shadows to stop after 1 expansion feels like a pretty big shift in strategy, especially since Claws of Awaji was originally marketed as the first expansion, not the only one. Anyway, according to Simon in the interview, he said there's currently no second expansion planned for year 2, and there is no indication that support will stretch into a 3rd year either, which is pretty self-apparent. Now, Shadows will still get post-launch content, but it's now going to be smaller updates instead of full story expansions, so I'd assume stuff like, adding features that should probably have been in the game at launch, new finishers, I mean, come on, but maybe new short quests, which is fine, I guess. Oh yeah, and one more thing, what the hell happened to the supposed co-op mode? The one that was supposed to be part of the post-launch plans? And that's not even a real question at this point, it feels pretty obvious what happened. My guess is Ubisoft expected the post-launch of Shadows to be a lot better than it did, and when that did not happen, certain plans quietly got dropped. A co-op mode isn't something you casually release, so that takes time and resources, especially a player base too that's actually excited to use it. Shadows never really had that momentum, so the way I see it, the co-op mode is basically done. It's not officially cancelled, but functionally I think it's dead, and to me that lines up with everything else we've seen. Okay, now let's talk about the Assassin's Creed Netflix show, because this is quietly one of the biggest wildcards heading into the new year. This has been in development for so long that I think a lot of people, myself included, just mentally stopped expecting it to ever actually happen. But now we know it's very real. Casting is happening. I mean, a director is attached and production is seemingly gearing up for 2026. So first, the cast. The first few regulars that have been announced are Toby Wallace, Lola Pettigrew, Zachary Hart, and Laura Marcus. Now, I'm going to be straight up, I don't know any of them. I'm not tapped into their filmographies like that. The other important thing is we don't know who they're playing yet. Their character details are being kept secret, which, makes sense because Assassin's Creed casting usually gives away the setting. They're trying to avoid that. But it is reported that it's being set in ancient Rome, which personally I don't really like. I mean, if you are making a live action series on a video game franchise like Assassin's Creed, how about you set it during the goddamn era where we had literal assassins and Templars? It's such a simple concept to get wrong, but hey, what do I know, right? I'm not gonna write it off yet, and this is why. The director. We now know the director is Johan Renck. He's the guy behind HBO's Emmy-winning Chernobyl, which already says a lot on its own. On top of that, he's directed episodes of some of the biggest TV shows ever made. I'm talking about shows like Breaking Bad, The Walking Dead, Vikings, and Bates Motel. That's an insanely strong resume. To me, that's easily one of the most reassuring parts of this whole project, because it shows Netflix and Ubisoft are not treating this lightly. They went out and got somebody who actually knows how to handle heavy material. Now, as for when this show is coming out, there's still no official release date. I did see people toss out 2026, but I don't really buy that, because with production only really starting quite recently, that timeline feels way too optimistic. Realistically, I'd be looking at 2028, maybe even 2029 or later if things move slowly. I don't know. The last few things I want to talk about are more confusing. First off, Assassin's Creed Invictus, which is easily the weirdest and most mysterious Assassin's Creed project we know exists. And that's not even me being dramatic, by the way. We know it's real. Ubisoft has acknowledged it. It was revealed alongside a bunch of other projects and then it just vanished. We haven't had a trailer or any real confirmation that it's still alive. All we officially know is that Invictus is a multiplayer-focused Assassin's Creed game. Now here's where things get pretty interesting, because Invictus is reportedly being worked on by developers who previously worked on For Honor. And I think that makes a lot of sense, because if you're going to do a competitive multiplayer Assassin's Creed game, you would want a team that actually understands PvP design. And if I'm not mistaken, I think For Honor is a very good game, right? I think, maybe? Now, whether that translates well to Assassin's Creed is another question entirely, but at least the experience is there. As for when we'll see it, I genuinely think if Ubisoft does host a Ubisoft Forward in 2026, as I hope they do, Invictus would probably be there. That would be the smartest way to reintroduce it and just confirm it still exists. But I'll also be completely real. There is a non-zero chance that Assassin's Creed Invictus has quietly been cancelled, and we just haven't been told yet. Ubisoft is in that kind of phase right now. If it isn't cancelled though, I do think a 2026 release makes the most sense, assuming everything goes smoothly, of course. And the last thing I want to talk about is Assassin's Creed Jade, because seriously, where the fuck did this game go? Remember when it had that beta a few years back and people came out of it saying it was pretty cool? For a while, this was lined up to be the next Assassin's Creed release, and that wasn't speculation, that came straight from Tom Henderson. When we as fans have no idea where a game like this even is, it's usually not a good sign. I also saw that Tom Henderson was asked directly about Jade's status, and even he could not confirm it or find any solid information about where the game currently stands. To me, that kind of silence almost points to a delay at best, or something much worse behind the scenes like a cancellation. I also ran a poll to see how interested people are in Assassin's Creed Jade, and to be honest, the results were not encouraging at all. A lot of you just don't seem that excited for it. I think that boils down to two main reasons. First of all, it's a mobile game and that alone turns off a lot of people. And second, Ubisoft really hasn't done enough to convince anybody that Jade will feel like a full Assassin's Creed game instead of one of those, watered down spin-offs. I think I saw a Twitter user Zephyrus, who is an Assassin's Creed fan page. He tweeted out some speculation that maybe Ubisoft and Tencent are working on PC and console versions of Jade, which to be fair could explain why development feels so drawn out. If that's true, then the scope of the project probably changed midway through. I will say the Discord is still active and the website is still up, so technically it's not officially dead. But to be honest, this is one of the hardest Assassin's Creed projects to read right now. I couldn't tell you a thing about this one. So yeah, that's pretty much where Assassin's Creed is heading right now in 2026. It's basically a lot of question marks, to be honest, and a franchise that clearly feels like it's in a rebuilding phase more than anything else. Let me know down below what you're actually excited for about Assassin's Creed in 2026, or if you've completely checked out mentally about this franchise at this point. So yeah, if you did enjoy this video, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I will see you all in the next video. Goodbye.